We are now going to look at the following commands: the dot split, the end and sub arguments in the print statement. We are going to introduce to the math library and the use of /n. So first of all, what happens is where we use the split command is, say, for example, you need the user to enter 5 numbers. So by traditional approach, what you are going to do is you would create a variable A, and then you will ask the user to enter the first number through the input statement. And because this is going to be an integer or a decimal, assuming that the user is just going to enter integer, so I will convert this, whatever is coming from the keyboard, into an integer by putting it in int. So I will now need to create a variable B for the second, third, fourth, and fifth. So let me just rename the variable. So B, variable C, variable D, and variable E. And then here accordingly enter first. I will enter this as second, enter the third number, enter the fourth number, and enter the fifth number. This is one way of what we do it. So when we run the statements, let me just put a colon to increase the readability here. Copy this colon and I'm pasting it here, here, here. So when I run this, so now I will enter the first number. So first number enter is 12. It will ask me to enter the second number, 56. Third number I enter as 89. Fourth number 45. And then fifth number say 56. And then depending upon whatever values you entered, you can further go on and do some operations. So this is one way, by taking one value at a time. There could be instances, wherein you want all these 5 numbers, 10 numbers, 6 numbers to be entered together. Then in such a case, you should tell Python how these numbers are separated. For example, these numbers could be separated by a comma. So let us say instead of taking numbers one by one, I can collect these numbers with these separated by a comma. For example, I will ask users to enter numbers separated by a comma. So we will enter all these numbers separated by a comma. Accordingly, Python should now realizes that comma is a separator. So wherever comma is there, Python will split it and accordingly assign them to the variables. So for that, we have the split function. So how do we are going to use this? If I need 5 numbers from the users, then I will need 5 variables. So I create 5 variables, A, comma, B, comma, C, comma, D. And then I will use the input function. Input, now I will say enter 5 numbers separated by comma or by full stop or by anything. I want them to be separated by comma, so I put a comma here. Now, whatever we need to tell Python what the separator is. Here, we are telling the user that the separator should be a comma, but to tell Python, so now I will use the dot split function. And in split function, in inverted commas, I will specify what type of a separator is. So I put a comma over here. So now what happens is, if I run the statement, let me just print these values also, only then it will be clear. So print A, comma B, comma C, comma D, comma E, and then I hear the values entered were, so select values entered were A, B, C, and D, as you can see. Let me run this and show you demonstrate this. So enter 5 numbers separated by comma. So I will enter the 5 numbers 45, comma 56, comma 89, comma say 78, and comma 23. Remember, after the last number, you should not put a comma. I click on enter. So Python has correctly recognized what these numbers were. Wherever it found a comma, it split. How it basically functions is, at the first instance of a comma, it finds here. So 45 will go to A. The second number before comma will go to B. The third number will go to C. That is how it basically functions. And then accordingly, you can carry out your mathematical operations. But remember, what has happened is all these values are currently, even though it appears like numbers, these are currently recognized as text. Here you can see in the variable explorer that variable values A, B, C, D, E, the type is all string. So to carry out mathematical functions, you will now need to convert this into an integer. How do we convert that into integer? Now we'll have to call A is equal to int of A. What I'm trying to do over here is the new value in A will be equal to the old value converted to an integer. Old value, which was a text, converted that to an integer and pass it back to A. Now I will now need to do this for all. So B is equal to int of B, and then I will say C is equal to int of C. I can now say D is equal to int of D, and finally E is equal to int of E. I will do this and then I can print all the numbers separated by comma. Remember, यहाँ पे we cannot use a common int for all because int or this typecasting function int and it works with one value at a time. So if I use it here in the first line, what is going to happen is there are 5 numbers which are going to come together. So your function and your code will fail. So that is why, because it works with one value at a time, I will separately call each value one by one, convert and store them. So what if I wanted, instead of a comma, if I wanted the separator to be a space or to a full stop? So accordingly, I can specify that the separator is to be a space. And then here in Python, in the split function, instead of the comma, I will put a space. And the program will work as it is without any issue. So now let me run this once again. So enter 5 numbers separated by space. So 12 space 56 space 89 space 85 space 23. Remember, after the last number, no space. And then the value is entered were 12, 56, 89, and 85 and 23. Now what happens is, this is not the output statement that you can see the values entered were. This is not a correct way of showing, because correctly then, because these are different numbers, they should be separated by a comma. So in such a case, we can use the separate function. Here you can use an argument. This is the argument for print. You can specify how different parts within the same print statement should be separated. That is SEP. Here I can tell that these values should be separated by a comma. So what happens is, by default, all these values, they are separated by a space. This is a default. That is, all parts within the same print statement are separated by a space. So if you want something else, then you need to specify that using the SEP, separate argument. Here I'm specifying it to be a comma. Let me run this once again. So enter 5 numbers separated by space, 78 space 89 space 45 space 23 space 12. I press enter. So I get the values entered were 78, 89, 45, 23, 12. But let me just reduce the font size to show. Yeah. Now what happens is, the values entered were, after this statement, the values entered were, I get a comma. Why is this comma over here? Because the values entered were is the first part. So after every part, a comma, by default Python puts a comma. So I don't want this comma over here. In such a case, I will have to work around. How can I work around this? I will now need to use 2 print statements. Just to reduce the time, what I will do, I will just take 3 numbers. So here I will change this to 3. Here print the values entered were, because there are only 3 numbers that are going to come. So I will remove C from here. Yeah, let me just copy here and paste it once again. So first, what I will now make 2 print statements. In the first part, I will just enter the values entered were, and in the second part, I will print out the values. So let me run this now for you. So enter the 3 numbers separated by space. So 45 space 89 space 12, and I click on enter. So now I got an error. The reason I got an error is because here, when I'm just sending in 3 values, but here there are 5 variables. So actually D and E didn't receive any value. That is why it is throwing an error. So I'll make the corrections and run my code once again. So here 45, 89 and 56. So I get the values entered were 45, 89 and 56. This is fine for me now. But one thing what happened is, the values entered were is on one line, 45, 89, 56 is on another line. Why? Because I have used 2 separate print statements. And after a print statement, by default, Python enters a new line character. That is, each print statement by default ends with a new line character. To tell Python that do not enter a new line character, please continue on the same line, I will now need to specify how it ends. So I put a comma, I put an end, and here within the end, I will specify that it should, that the line should end with only with a space. So now when I run this command once again 45, 89, 56. Now I get everything on the same line. The lines entered were 45, 89, 56. I hope the functioning of the end argument and the sub argument both are clear. Sep specifies how different parts within the same print statement should be separated, and end specifies how a print statement should end at the end. By default, for the end, the value is new line character, and by default for sep, the value is space. So what we will now do is, we will now go on to understand the math library. So many of the time you will need to solve mathematical problems, you need to do a lot of calculations. So those values are not directly stored in Python. Those are stored in a separate library in math, because not everybody will need that library. So if you want to do any specific sine, cos, tan, all these calculations, these you can call that library, and from that you can call the specific value that you want. So for example, I can now, to do sine calculations, I can now import the math library. Let us say what I want to calculate the sine, cos and tan of any degree value that you are entering. So I will now create a variable a. I will ask the user through the input statement to enter the value, enter the angle in degrees. Now these values which have been coming from the user is I am asking him to enter in degrees. So because it is coming from the keyboard, it would be a text initially. So I will need to convert that to a float. And then in float, because it can be a decimal number also, right? So the value which is in text will now be converted to a decimal number through float, and then it will be stored in A. Now what I need to do, remember all these sine, cos, tan functions need values in radians. So this value in A, I will need to convert it into a radius. So I can use the original variable A, or I can, let us say, create a new value A, or I can write AR, that is A in radians. AR is equal to, so the value which is there in A in degrees, multiply that by, we know we need to multiply a value, to convert any value in degrees to radius, we need to multiply by pi by 180. So for that, from where do you get pi? Either you can type 3.14 or you can do 22 by 7, or from the math function, you can use the pi value. So this is pi. But Python will not understand where this pi is coming from. So you will need to specify from where it is coming from. That is, it is defined in the math library. So from the math library, if you are using anything, then you specify the name of the library as math, and then put a dot, and the function constant, whatever you need, you specify. That is what we are telling is from math library, fetch the value of pi. This divided by 180. So the value in degrees, which is in A, multiplied by pi, divided by 180. The value is converted to radians and stored in AR. Now what I need to do, I need to calculate the sign. So I will make a print statement. In print statement, I will say the sine of the entered angle is ANGLE is, so calculation part, how do I calculate? From math, call the sine function, and I want the sine function of the value which is there in AR. So let me run the statement now. So I run this, you get the enter the angle in degrees option. I enter the angle as say 30 degrees. So now what is going to happen is the sine of the entered angle is 0.499, or basically it is 0. Rounding up to 5. So you get the answer. That is it. This is how you can use values. So remember, when you are using a value or a function or a constant from a library, you should first call the name of that library, then use the dot operator and the function. So now with this, let us write a program to calculate, what this program is intended to do is, we need to calculate area and a perimeter of say circle, rectangle, and square. So the program will ask user, it will provide a choice, enter 1 for circle, 2 for rectangle, 3 for square. Depending upon what choice the user has provided, the area will now, or the program will calculate the respective area and perimeter of the figure. So what I will do is, let me first call to get the choice. So choice is equal to input and messages, enter 1 for circle, comma 2 for square, 3 for rectangle. Let me just correct my spellings. So yeah, and the choice is equal to 1 for circle, 2 for square, 3 for rectangle. Let me run this for you now. So you can see I get this option, enter 1 for circle, 2 for square, 3 for rectangle. Now all these options are coming in same lines. Now let me just decrease the font size further. So you see what is happening by default, all this is printed in the same line. Now, what if you want them in separate lines? So for that, you can use the slash n. So here I can type slash n. Here before 2, I will put one more slash n. And here after 3, I will put one more slash n. Lastly, after rectangle, I will put one more slash n, and then I can do this. So now look at the way it changes. Let me stop and run this once again. So now you can see, now it is coming one below the other. So this increase the readability or the visibility. Enter 1 for circle, 2 for square, 3 for rectangle. So this is, I hope you have understood the functioning of the slash n, new line character. Now next, what is, depending upon say, if the user enters 1, what does that mean? He wants the area and perimeter for a circle. So for that particular aspect, what I will do is I will create a value A. A is equal to, if choice. Oh, I need to come into the other. Let me just reduce the font size. Yeah. So if choice, if the value in choice is equal to 1, what do I need to do? I need to calculate area and perimeter for a circle. Now to calculate area for a circle, what do I need? I need the value of the radius from the user. So float input in message, enter radius. So this value, I will put this in R. The moment user enters R, then what I can calculate area. Area is equal to, for a circle, pi r square. Where is pi? Pi is in math. So from math, call pi, multiply this value by r square. So r into r, that is r square. Otherwise, what you can do is, you can put double asterisk and put a 2. What does this tell? It simply tells r raised to 2. So this is area and perimeter. Perimeter for a circle will be equal to 2 pi r. So 2 multiplied by pi. Where is pi? Pi is in math. Math dot pi multiplied by r. So this is the formula for a circle. And next, what I can do is elif. That is, here I can run elif choice equal to 2. Then I can do the steps for rectangle. And if choice is equal, sorry, if n is elif, if the entered value is 2, then I can do the steps for square. And if the value is 3, then I can do that for rectangle. For square, what do I need? For square, I just need side. So here, let me copy the statement. So for squares, S is equal to float, enter side, and then area. Area for a square will be equal to side square. So S into S. And perimeter for a circle will be, for a square will be 4 times S. So 4 multiplied by S. Lastly, for a rectangle, so elif. I copy this and then I put here elif choice equal to 3. So which means now I will need 2 parameters. So I need length. So float input enter length. Choice is equal to 3 means it is for rectangle. So I get length for a rectangle and then I can take breadth for the rectangle. So here I can now put B for breadth and I will say enter breadth. Lastly, we need area for a square for a rectangle will be length into breadth, and perimeter for a rectangle will be 2 times length plus breadth. And finally, I can say once my print the area is, where is area stored? The area is stored in A. And then in the next one, I can see print the perimeter is in B. If I run this, let me run this. I am not getting anything. Let me stop this function. Yeah. And let me run once again. Okay. So now what happening is the area enter. It is saying that there is some error. So because I have forgotten to put a comma here. So there was the error. Let me run this once again now. So enter 1 for circle, 2 for circle, 3 for rectangle. So I say enter 2. So I'm getting name A is not defined. I'm getting an error. A is not defined. So I will now look at where it went to. Before we go that, there is one simple mistake that we are all doing, and that why we are getting this error is, even though I entered 2, ideally what should run? This line of code should run, choice equal to 2. But remember, what the value that is there in choice is 2, but what is its nature? It is a text-based nature because it is coming from keyboard. And here I'm comparing it with a numerical 2. That is why it didn't meet this condition. So directly we came here in the statement, print the area is A, and it didn't find what A is, and that is why we got this error that it is not defined. So why we are having this? Because we know that whatever value comes from the keyboard has to be as a text. It needs to be converted to an appropriate format. So I can here at this particular state convert it to an integer, and then my program will work fine. Or else if I don't do this, then what I can do is here, rather than comparing it with the numerical one, I will ask it to compare it with the text one by putting that one in inverted commas. Similarly, this 2, I'll put it in inverted commas, and this 3 over here, I will put it in inverted commas. So I will now compare the value with text 1, text 2, text 3. So let me run this once again. and enter 1 for circle, 2 for square, 3 for rectangle. So let us say I want to do calculations for a circle. So I press 1. So now it's asking me to enter radius. The radius, let us say entered is 40. So I get math is not defined. Why I'm getting math is not defined? Because when I'm using the math library, I should tell Python to import that library, which I didn't do. So I can now import math from library. So now when I run this once again, I wanted for circle, so I type 1, enter radius. Radius entered is 40. So I get the values are the area is 5026 and the perimeter is 250